All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to the July 20th meeting of SIG-Auth. We have a couple items on the agenda, so let's get started. All right. So first off, issues of note. I'll just start opening these up.
I just threw these in here to get eyes on them. These were a couple bugs that got identified. I think they were late last release. That seemed like things we should try to address in the 125 timeframe. They are pretty long standing, so I don't know that they are like the severity is high, but they're correctness issues. So it would be good to get them addressed. This one, I don't think has anyone actively working on it. I think it got assigned a while ago and I haven't seen any activity. So if it's going to get addressed in 125, we probably need someone else to pick it up.
All right.
It's currently assigned to someone, right?
It is, but that's been a month, more than a month.
Should we ask them if they're still working on it?
Yeah, probably so.
Okay, I can ask.
The other one, someone got assigned, someone opened a pull request today, actually. So I wanted to get eyes on it since this is a, I vaguely remember there being a little bit of discussion around the issue, whether it was necessary. If we're requiring key usages that aren't strictly required for a particular certificate type, that doesn't seem great, especially if we want to interoperate with other signers who might raise their eyebrows at like, why do you need this key usage? So I haven't reviewed the PR. I assign myself to review the PR for like compatibility, backwards forwards compatibility. But if people have thoughts on the actual key usage aspect, I would welcome that feedback. Anyway, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it here, but I did want to highlight those and link to them if anyone cared.
Awesome. Thanks for raising these. All right, so pool of note, that's what we just opened up. Cool, moving on to the KMS stuff. Anything specifically you wanted to raise here?
I think this is just called to get more eyes on it, more reviews, so that we can get this hopefully merged for 125. And there are a bunch of things that are pending on this PR, like like docs and whatnot.
The big one, or there's a bunch of things pending on this PR.
Yeah, that needs to happen for 125.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I had a question related to this in terms of implementation. So in the KEP, we mentioned that we're going to use a new proto structure format for storing this. And as I reviewed some of the initial code that initially written, and I was unsure if we were going to try to like directly call the Marshall functions on that prototype, or would we want to use the protobuf serializer we have, which wraps the whole thing in the runtime.unknown thing for the type meta stuff, which then leads to the question of if we did the latter, then are we gonna basically have like versioning of this new proto structure, which we will then, I guess, bump and maintain and test for? Basically, how close are we gonna make it to the rest of our code base And how much flexibility do we think we need here?
That's a good question. So I don't think we need multiple encoding formats. And I'd like to think that we're not going to need a V2 of the struct, I guess the proto anytime soon. But I don't know. I guess the alternative is doing a migration like we're doing now. Well, we do have the that prefix, so we can do versioning later. I guess a version switch later, if needed. I guess how much work is it to? Are there pros towards just using the proto-marshal functions?
So
is it a lot simpler?
So it certainly like ends up being kind of like easier code to read because all the logic basically already exists in a separate place, and in a sense you could assume it's correct. And it gives you a bunch of flexibility to change stuff later. The weirdness of that flexibility is now you're storing a runtime.unknown with type meta information. So now you have to have type meta information, right? Like you have to declare an API version and stuff for the thing that you're going to store in there, because you're effectively saying that that encrypted object is like, for example, the equivalent of like a pod or something, right? Like you have like that layer of indirection. So you get a bunch of flexibility from that layer, but you also get this weird indirection because, like for example, what's the version of encrypted object? Like what's the group version kind of, or I guess I meant the kind, what is the group and the version of this object? And are we going to change it over time? And that reminds me of the etcd storage path test that confirms this for all existing resources, right? So I would feel the need to like expand it to cover this. Jordan, are you saying something about this?
I would like to hear what others think. Maybe Jordan, do you think this needs a full API group for the like prefix and associated data for an encrypted record?
I don't know. I mean, anytime we're talking about like wire serialization or storage serialization, I think we want to have a really clear understanding of what we're going to do in the future if that format changes, or if we need to version it or detect. Like, what Mo was talking about reminds me of how we had to do like envelope wrapping of proto-encoded stuff to add like an API version kind. But I will admit that my proto serialization foo is weak. And so maybe there are facilities for doing that version, like self-identification of serialized content that we're not taking advantage of. I'm just not very familiar with what is possible.
This isn't about proto serialization, right? This is about how do we identify that a record in etcd is an encrypted blob.
And we have the transform prefix for that.
Yeah.
So,
okay, maybe I understood what Mo was asking about, like if we were going to be marshalling the prototype to build that header. Maybe I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
So with this version, we are adding some overhead, right? Like because etcd objects are limited to 1 megabyte, and adding encryption adds some small overhead, but now we add a lot more data in terms of overhead to each secret. So we could run into secrets not being able to be serialized to etcd without in the new version where it would have been possible in the old.
I see.
So you have to remember those secrets are size limited by the API server first, with a much smaller size than the maximum etcd size limit. So I don't think you can actually practically hit that case, because our API doesn't like you storing a bunch of bytes and secrets, because we're not your database.
Okay, so I see the one megabyte limit that I saw is a API server thing, not an etcd.
Yeah, etcd also has a pretty small limit. It's just bigger than 1 megabyte. It's like 1.5 or something.
Okay.
I'm not
right,
sure
thanks.
that's true. So we accept up to 3 megabyte requests in the API server.
Yeah, so I'm talking specifically just about Kubernetes secrets and their data field and its validation, like a static API server validation. We just like count all the bytes, and if they're over a certain amount of bytes, we're like, no, please.
Really?
Yes, I know, because I use secrets as
Okay.
databases.
I knew we did that on annotations and labels. I didn't know we did that on secrets.
Yeah, we size limit you just to prevent, presumably to prevent you from using Kubernetes as your database.
Is that like a limit on the base 64 encoded data, counting the overhead, or is it on the unencoded version of it?
I always forget at which
It
layer.
is only on the value of the fields in the data, the byte length.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I think my overall question is, so this type encrypted object that Mike has on screen, do we want to treat it like we treat like runtime.unknown, which is it's just the thing that's stored and it's not versioned, it is just directly OCAT? Or are we gonna use runtime.unknown and its raw field to store one of these things at some version and then ask ourselves to version it somehow? And like the prefix that we're adding, the magic encrypted proto prefix, has the same like 2 reserved bytes at the end to allow for us to bump it and go crazy and do whatever we want with our proto serialization later. I just was trying to figure out what is the correct answer right now, because when I had asked for that stuff in the KEP, in my head I had just sort of imagined, well, this is the thing you store, and you don't need to check if this is the thing you're storing.
Yeah, I think so too, because we have the switch on the prefix already, so you can have any very specific decoding logic you want and not have to worry about bumping a version in the future, right? So I guess we don't get very much benefit from the runtime object generic deserialization.
Okay, and so that would mean that if we wanted a V2 of this API, we would bump those last 2 bytes that Mo was talking about, and we'd be able to have encrypted object V2.
Yeah, so,
right.
And that would only be, I think, if you wanted to make a change that like an old API server using the old schema would confuse or lose data or do something weird. So it would be purposefully saying, hey, I want this V2 thing, and I'll do like, a graceful rollout of the capability of being able to read such a thing, but I won't write as it for some, like another release, et cetera, et cetera. And we could phase it in carefully. So I think we have the flexibility we need. Is just, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't leaning towards the proto serializer out of just like knowing it.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that makes sense to me. We can forego most of the machinery because it's not needed here.
That works for me, as long as we can have that V2. It sounds like we can.
V3.
V3, sorry, V3. Let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not. Let's please just get it right this time.
Let's just all assume V1 and V2 won't work, and let's go straight to V3 now.
Yeah. Okay, Mo, I assigned that to you. I'll take a look as well.
I see a hand.
All right.
Oh, the hand disappeared. Sorry.
I think that was earlier, right?
Yeah, I just lowered it. That's my question.
Yeah.
Nish, do you have other
like trending towards code freeze? Let's make sure that the people who should be reviewing things are like assigned. So if it's assigned to Mo and you were going to look, Mike, maybe assign yourself, and then we can try to get like order of a day or two turnarounds on things. Otherwise, we won't make progress towards code freeze.
Anish, is there any other specific questions or concerns that you want to highlight to try to get any high bandwidth feedback? That was the one item about product stuff was the thing that was on my mind, but I don't remember anything else either.
Yeah, I think it was only that was outstanding. Other than that, for the V2 alpha one, I don't think we have anything else.
Sure.
All right, and the next one was this one. So this is just a continuation of switching to ASGCM from that we started last release, correct?
That's right.
If you could scroll down to the to Tim's comment, that would be good. He was asking if it's KEP, if it needs a KEP or for that change.
This isn't. I would consider this to be an implementation detail of the API server.
Also, Anish, can you find my PR that was like, I made a PR that did this as a like, remember to finish this by 125. Can you please find it and close it and say that it was superseded by yours?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I would agree with you, Mike, that I just consider this an implementation detail, and we made sure to roll it out in a way over multiple versions so that it doesn't break anything, and we're not removing the ability to read the CBC data maybe ever. So it's like no action required.
Yeah, the less user facing it is, the less a KEP is needed. If there are like KEPs are useful both for communicating like user facing things and for like documenting design decisions. So like the more of either of those there are in this, the more useful a KEP is to capture that. If we're intending this to be like a self-driving thing where there's no user toggle switches and there's no like action required and it's not user surfaced, then maybe it's like fully an implementation detail. I haven't dug into this enough to know, but.
So this is the data encryption algorithm that we use for all envelope encryption. So envelope encryption gets one type of encryption. In the past, that was AES-CBC. We're trying to change that to AES-GCM. It's not configurable. Users should not notice that we are making this migration. We supported both in 124 to allow for downgrade of 125 to 124 clusters. Now we are switching writes to AES-GCM while supporting reads by AES-CBC. I think just making sure that the documentation is accurate. I think maybe somebody might be interested in knowing what the algorithm is used because of they have to tell a compliance auditor or something. But other than that, there should be no user action and it's a relatively small change. So I would say no cap, no, no, I'm not even sure. Maybe a release note, a very minor one that says that there's no action required.
Yeah. And this
should we take the?
Go ahead.
Sorry, should we take the opportunity to like and add this to the serialization in KMS v2, like in case we need both for interest rate protection reasons and to be able to change the algorithm more smoothly in the future.
It's been a while, Rita, and this and anyone else who had these conversations when we were talking about it. I think we voted for no, we will not include any details about this. It's an implementation detail. If we have to change it, we'll bump the version and we'll pick whatever the other thing is.
Well, and also it's going to be part of the release notes, right? So it would actually get its own.
Well, I mean, I just referring to V2, right? V2 is just going to do GCM. And
right.
If you want something else later.
As in, you don't need V2 to use GCM, which is nice.
Well, yeah. So yeah, V2 is just going to start correct and be done.
It's also independent of the KMS API or configuration. I mean, maybe not configuration, but it is fairly it is independent of like the KMS extension.
It seems to me like this change will now try to decrypt twice for secrets encrypted with CBC. Right, like it'll try GCM first, fail, and then try CBC. Is that
it already does that?
Yeah, I mean, we always try in every single way possible until you just give up and can't figure out how to get your data because it's like the key's gone or something. So like, I mean, if you're ever worried about this from that level, you just run source migration to force it to the latest.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And we can always add a field to the encrypted blob thing now.
Yeah, that's what I meant really, like to add a field there. Yeah.
It's possible to add it later. And since we haven't had like a request to make this configurable yet, I would say we can add it once that request comes in. And it would be pretty much compatible change to support that in the future. We'll just default to GCM.
Pretty much compatible changes are the best kind.
Pretty much compatible in that you can't use it until it has been available in 2 releases for the downgrade, I guess. So yeah. It takes longer to make available than other features in Kubernetes, but not much longer.
Yeah. This seems in line with other types of validation fixes that we've made where like internally validation like tolerated relaxed data, but didn't on update, but didn't allow it on create for release, and then did the next level of enablement, the next release. And there were no user knobs, no feature gates, no cap. It was like, oh, we found a validation bug and we fixed it over 2 releases.
I'll just say from SIG-Auth. Detail of the envelope encryption storage transformer. There are no feature gates or user knobs, and the user should never be aware of the migration. So I guess let's make sure the doc is is, let's make sure the doc is accurate, but don't think we need to, I guess, stretch this out with a KEP or feature gates or configuration this time. All right. Does everybody somewhat agree with that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Were there any other concerns here? This seems aligned with what we had been planning on doing, so. I'm going to also assign this to Mo. Easy 3-line. Cool. Anything else on this topic? So follow up from last 2 weeks, there was Mo, the client proxy for 126 is a bunch of comments were addressed, so please take a look at that.
Yeah, I can. I haven't gone back and watched the recording, but I plan on doing that. Well,
yeah,
well before 126 deadlines.
Yeah. And I can't remember if the trust anchors is in a similar state, but yeah, the client exec stuff came up last meeting. Cool. So I think that that's it for our regular agenda items. It's off to the flakes. Everything looks good. Secret store stuff is reviewed in the secret store meetings. And then let's look at flakes. Local E2E. What is local E2E now?
That's running E2E on a local up cluster.
Okay.
It doesn't look like that's flaked in a while.
These all look pretty good. I'm actually getting kicked out. I don't know why, but I'm getting kicked out of a meeting room. So I will need somebody else to continue this. Sorry.
Okay. Who has host?
I do. Do you want me to drive or do you want to be host?
I am in the web client, so maybe it would be better if you drove.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, we got it.
Were we here, I think, earlier? Okay.
The primary one, so this one continues to be problematic on the Windows jobs. And I can't tell if it's because they were Windows jobs or because they were older releases. I know there were some DNS resolution issues that I think got like a workaround put in place, but that might have happened in the 124 timeframe. So if these are failing on the 123 Windows jobs, that might predate that workaround.
So it's 123.
Yeah. Let me see if I can dig up when that workaround went in. Looks like that went in 121, so that's not related to that. Wow, that was a long time ago.
Okay, so do we want to follow up with SIG Windows on this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was going to ask if there were a lot of failures in those jobs, but it looks like it's just a couple. Yeah, if we're seeing it fail in several jobs and they look like they have a common denominator of Windows and 123, that's a little eyebrow raising.
Okay.
I can open an issue and tag in Windows and Auth and maybe see if we can ask someone on the SIG Windows to take a look.
Sounds good. What about these other ones?
I don't know. Maybe open up one of those and see if there's a lot of failures in that job. It looks like there might be timeout issues in that job. It's a little bit like reading tea leaves. If like a overloaded timeout type thing can make weird flakes show up in random tests. To me, this one's less clear. Like the Windows one, there were just a couple failures, which seemed weird. This one has like 10. So it seems like maybe something generic is going on with the job. I'm not sure.
Oh. So many.
Yeah, I kind of discount failures like this. Like
so many different things. Yeah. Okay. Could also be like test infra, maybe.
Yeah, it's always possible. I think the ones that are best for us to press on are ones where like one of our tests is failing across multiple jobs in a similar environment. So, so like the Windows 123 one seems interesting.
Okay.
Ooh, that's the next one down is an interesting failure text.
Or this one?
Oh yeah, so this is the local EDE. Like that's an interesting failure text. Yeah, this also seems systemic though. If you expand like a random thing in there, is it that same like glob issue?
I don't know.
I know a lot of timeout failures spun up when Ginkgo switched from Ginkgo v1 to Ginkgo v2. And I know like the investigation of that is ongoing. So I probably wouldn't spend time here digging into this. Like this looks more systemic, not auth specific.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're probably far down enough that like there have been failures in the last couple weeks.
Mhm.
This is the local EDE, which seems like that job itself has a problem. And it doesn't look like we've got recent regular flakes in any like core jobs or jobs that we own. So that's good.
And for what it's worth, this
Same.
was what we discussed in the last meeting. For what it's worth.
Yeah, okay,
because I was like, this looks very familiar.
Yeah.
It's like an environment problem.
Well, could we fix the environment? Okay, I'll, instead of opening a new one, I'll try to ping that or track someone down.
Okay, great. Yeah, let me know if you need any help.
All right.
Maybe Test Infra might know a little bit more about this, maybe.
Maybe. I haven't had good success when it's not like a environment thing that affects a lot of jobs. If it's like specific to Win 23 or specific to like a GCP upgrade release branch test, like the test infra folks are like, well, I don't know, we gave you VMs and they're working for all the other jobs.
Yeah, but like this one is not related to Windows, right? And we're seeing consistent
Right.
failures. So
yeah,
it's hard to point at Windows.
Right. No, I meant for the 123 Azure one. The local EDEs have a ton of failures across all areas. So
I see. Across all SIGs, you mean?
He's in the weird position of not being a required pre-submit. So when something creeps in that causes problems there, it's always like a lagging, like, oh, the periodic job went haywire.
Okay.
All
right. I mean, I'll also ping some folks from SIG Windows, see if they know anything here.
Yeah, it's interesting. 124 jobs. I don't. Maybe there aren't 124 jobs, but it's interesting that it's only the 123 jobs where it's showing up. Okay. But if we want to ping folks into the issue that was linked from last meeting, it looks like there's already that one open.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just also tag the SIG window folks. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else we need to look at?
Just a reminder that code freeze will happen before our next meeting. So
okay.
Timely reviews and timely updates for anything we want to get into 125.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks all.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.